Sophie Federer, no relation, wished there was a version of Hawkeye that could be used in day-to-day life. She was forever saying the wrong thing at the wrong time, or rather, the right thing at the wrong time. Saying things that needed to be said, but often insensitive of the occasion. This is where a real-life Hawkeye would come in handy, to referee whether what she said was right or wrong, in or out. After the first round matches of this year's Wimbledon had kicked off, Sophie had gone for a drink with her friend Emma, who had just been dumped. The friend was crying, obviously heartbroken. Sophie was trying to sympathise, but Emma just said the same sentence with different words over and over again for an hour, and none of it was about tennis. I mean, who could sit in a bar in SW19 on this week of all weeks and not discuss tennis? The main reason she had little sympathy though was because the now ex-boyfriend was a cunt. And she said as much. To try and hammer home the point, Sophie told her about the time when he chatted her up when Emma had gone to the toilet at a party. Judging from Emma's reaction, this was not the right thing to say. Sophie thought it was correct. Hawkeye could have adjudicated. Hawkeye? Out! Yeah, the comment was not appropriate. Miss Federer has 2 challenges remaining in this story. Sophie loves tennis. Ever since she was young, she dreamt of being the best female British player since Sue Barker. The problem was, she was awful at tennis. She had no basic aptitude, awful hand-to-eye coordination, and ran like the worst kind of girl. She then tried to climb the ranks of tennis umpiring. Having been a line umpire for the last 7 years, she was starting to wonder if there was a glass ceiling between her and the tall green chair of a proper umpire. There isn't a glass ceiling. The main thing stopping her from becoming a proper umpire is that she was worse at line calling than she was at tennis. She could tell whether a ball was in or out. That was easy, but she got bored too quickly. It was a tough task to concentrate on one line on the grass for hours whilst a perfect, pert tennis player's bum joggled about in her field of vision. There is a reason why most line judges are old men. Now, she hadn't officiated on a real ATP rank match since her infamous gaffe in last year's Wimbledon. She had a slight hangover and the match was quite dull. In the heat, she kept staring at Andy Roddick's arse as he bounced around awaiting a serve. The ball, lobbed by Janko Tipsarevic, was out, but so distracted by Roddick's perfect butt, instead of shouting out, she shouted arse. In the succeeding seconds, she thought that no one would notice and she must have gotten away with it. But the entire crowd of Court 12 laughing simultaneously was not mere coincidence. It even made the news. Now, the Lawn Tennis Association were not as amused, and although not disbarred, she's only been offered 1 amateur match in Eastbourne since that, and it wasn't even televised. But she hung on in at Wimbledon and managed to get a job as an usher for the championships. This meant she could still be on court during the matches, and that was all Sue Barker managed these days too. Now, these 2 weeks brought an influx of staff to the All England Tennis Club. A lot of them men. Sophie wanted one of them. She liked men. She'd fallen in love with too many tennis players in her time. Now, after Andy Murray cleared the quarterfinals in straight sets, she went for a drink with a couple of the ushers that were making eye contact and nodding at through the first week and a half. One was a boy called Ernie. He used to be a ball boy, but thankfully had no ambitions to be a tennis player. On the Wednesday night, they kept smiling at each other, but they were sat too far apart on the big table, and the opportunity to speak never arose. The next night was a more subdued affair. Soon enough, Ernie and Sophie were the only 2 people left at the bar. They got talking, there was chemistry, they seemed to like each other. Pim's o'clock had started several hours earlier, but was still going strong as they approached babbling nervously about themselves o'clock, sailed through awkward silent o'clock, and were both anticipating kiss o'clock sometime soon. But Sophie was getting too drunk and her problem reared its head like it always did. When she liked someone, she tended to like them too much and too soon. She'd often feel like she'd fallen in love with someone before even exchanging phone numbers. She told herself that this is what love at first sight was, but then had to remind herself that this is not what it looked like to the other person when she confessed love on the first date. Waiting at the bus stop, her head had a silent mantra swinging around, saying, "Don't say I love you, don't say I love you, don't say I love you." He was talking at her. The bus turned her corner. This was it, this was it. He said, "It's lovely to meet you. Fancy another drink tomorrow?" She thought, "Don't say I love you," and said, "Sure." But then she saw a shocked look on his face and realised in a sickening, horrible way that she'd actually thought sure and said, "I love you." Maybe it wasn't as bad as her gut instinct told her. Let's use Hawkeye. Hawkeye? Out! Ah, no. The comment was not appropriate. Miss Federer has 1 remaining challenge in this story. In embarrassment, she jumped on the bus and burst into tears before we could say a word. She called in sick for the semis, not able to face the embarrassment. But the Murray versus Federer final, I'm dreaming, was too much to miss. So she went in, hoping to avoid Ernie. As they were feeding people onto centre court, Ernie and Sophie's paths crossed. She mumbled hello and rushed off. He tried to say something, but she was lost in the crowd. In the break, after the memorable first set, she found a crumpled up piece of paper in her pocket. It was a note from Ernie saying, "I think I feel the same. Do you still fancy that drink?" She looked around. He was on the other side of the court. She broke all rules of tennis umpiring and jumped over the barrier and headed towards the net. He did the same thing. They met at the net and she just said, "Yes, I do," in front of centre court. Hawkeye? In! Yes. Despite being disbarred as an umpire, that was the correct thing to do. They are now in love. The end. Thank you very much.